The US has been the biggest disruptor of the world's peace and stability. However, no country or its officials said this so boldly until now. In the recent ASEAN tour, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi lashed out at the United States and said that nobody had the muscles to speak. In the meeting with Singapore's leader, he called the US the world's biggest source of instability, hinting that from now on, China will be keeping its eyes on the US every action. For decades, the US exploited countries and ensured peace never lasts, which no longer will be compromised by China now. What more did Wang Yi say, and what does this mean for the US? Is China ready to confront the US and demand an answer for its every misdemeanor? Welcome back to another exciting episode of our channel. Innovation Diary brings you China's innovation stories, projects, and growing influence in different parts of the world. If you are new to the channel and enjoy learning about fast-paced modernity, especially China's development and growing power, you will definitely find our videos intriguing. In this video, we will explain how Wang Yi lashed out at the US and what he said, making Biden ashamed and scared. Let's get started. Whenever the world is on its way to peace and stability, wars or economic crises emerge. Many people don't get the time to really track down the source of these crises. It's because they are created for the very reason to distract people from whatever they were doing. However, on having a close look, we can see a pattern in which the US is the only element present in all conflicts. It's the very initiator of the conflicts and disruptions which we can see without going back in distant history. For example, see the Ukraine war. It started because the US wanted NATO to go to Ukraine, and this war is going on because the US is forcing the West to support Ukraine and is providing weapons to Ukraine. It was the one starting wars in Iraq, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, Vietnam, and Korea, killing millions of people in the name of eradicating terrorism. Even if everyone knew this, little did they speak about it. But now China cannot tolerate this anymore as it has become the new superpower, pushing the US to the sidelines. Earlier, if there was none to question the U.S.'s disruptive actions, today there is. Recently, China's top diplomat and foreign minister Wang Yi lashed out at the U.S. for suppressing emerging countries and described Washington as the biggest source of instability in the world. He said that the United States only wants to maintain its unipolar hegemony. And since it wants a unipolar world, where only the U.S. has a say in global events, it is unwilling to see China's growth. Yet, Wang said, China is not the U.S. only concern. He hinted toward the paranoia the U.S. has always been infected with. This paranoia makes the U.S. imagine every entity as its rival. Whether that country is small or big, economically and militarily strong or not, the U.S. considers it its rival. But things don't stop there. Instead of engaging in rivalry and having fair competition, the U.S. decides to literally destroy that very country. That's what it did in the Iraq War, using the excuse of Iraq's possession of weapons of mass destruction. So the point is, the US can never accept a bipolar or multipolar world, Wang told Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. He said that the US actions hint toward a paradoxical behavior showing confusion. He continued that on the one hand, the US supports Taiwan's independence, becoming a country the world should trust on, while on the other hand, it fears fair competition with China and forces other countries to decouple from China. Well, yes, Wang did mock the US because that's what is needed. There must be someone who can speak candidly about the US and every misdemeanor it did, silencing its allies. However, China is a power in itself, and it does not have to appease the US and be silent on matters which demand China being vocal. Perhaps the most filthy of the US actions is its inability to accept emerging countries in the global landscape. Instead of allowing a multipolar world where various countries have a say in global matters, the U.S. suppresses those countries. Wang pointed this out, which also questions why the U.S. established organizations like the United Nations. On the one hand, it hates the multipolar world, while on the other, it created the UN, an organization which believes in a multipolar world. This suggests that all these organizations, systems, and world orders were superficial, where the U.S. was the only one pulling all strings. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video, and subscribe to our channel for more videos about China's development, power, and influence on the world. Let's continue now. In ensuring no country rises to heights, the U.S. becomes the biggest source of instability, the same as Wang said. These actions, Wang argued, will inevitably erode U.S.-owned credibility. laying bare the fact that the United States has evolved into a potent, destabilizing influence on the global stage, while the US is being already exposed. Hence, China had to take a step forward, he said. He emphasized that China's developmental trajectory would bring sustained benefits and opportunities to all nations, particularly its neighboring countries. It's also a major force in ensuring world peace, more capable than the US. Wang's diplomatic tour to Singapore, Malaysia, and Cambodia this week hints at China consolidating its power in the region. This meeting was geared towards fortifying ties with partners within the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, as Beijing intensifies its diplomatic ambitions in the developing world amidst escalating tensions with the United States. This timing coincided with U.S. President Joe Biden's announcement of fresh constraints on American investments in sensitive technologies within China. This was a long-anticipated measure that is projected to hinder China's progress in high-tech domains. According to a statement from the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Singapore's Prime Minister Lee conveyed to Wang during their meeting that major nations are expected to play a leading role in fostering mutual benefits within a global landscape. He said that at present, the global landscape is far from peaceful. This suggests that nations like Singapore want China to be the chair of the global peacemaker instead of the US. Lee affirmed Singapore's endorsement of ASEAN and China deepening their collaboration to collectively safeguard regional peace, stability, and development. During a separate meeting with Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, who is positioned to succeed Lee, Wang underscored the importance of upholding an international system centered around the United Nations and an international order rooted in the principles of international law. But Wang also knows how useless the US-presented system is, which is more superficial than effective. According to a Chinese Foreign Ministry release, Wang expressed Singapore's opposition to the law of the jungle and power-based politics. You see, countries, even if they are not taking names directly, are opposing the US actions. But what does history say about the US being the disruptor of global peace in every sense? Once, during the Afghanistan War, the US did a drone strike in Afghanistan, which it said was aimed at suspected suicide bombers. However, it tragically resulted in the loss of 10 innocent civilian lives, including a 2-year-old girl. Despite US media casting doubts on the credibility of the military's claims and presenting evidence that the targeted vehicle lacked explosives and the family had no affiliations with terrorist groups, the response from a spokesperson for the US Ministry of Defense was notably quashed. This suggested how the US values human life and considers it nothing if the humans are non-Americans. But what was the Afghan war all about? Well, oil and profits of war. Throughout its history, the United States has demonstrated aggressive military actions. In this trajectory, the United States emerged as a significant disruptor of global peace and stability. As U.S. historian Paul Atwood eloquently summarized, war is the American way of life. Over the course of more than 247 years, since it declared independence on July 4, 1776, the United States has experienced a mere 16 years without being embroiled in conflict. Yes, only 16 years out of 247 years. The U.S.'s rise to global prominence has been intertwined with a history marked by warfare, slavery, and widespread bloodshed. Following World War II, the United States embarked on a series of military campaigns in foreign lands, precipitating conflicts and chaos that reverberated across diverse corners of the world. This preference for warfare has left behind a trail of devastating civilian casualties and extensive property destruction. Consider the Iraq War as a prominent illustration. Defying global opposition, Washington launched an invasion of the oil-rich nation in 2003, citing the presence of weapons of mass destruction as justification despite a lack of substantial evidence. According to data from Brown University's Watson Institute for International and Public Affairs, a staggering 184,382 to 207,156 Iraqi civilians lost their lives due to violence related to the conflict. Furthermore, during this war, the utilization of weapons such as depleted uranium bombs and white phosphorus bombs inflicted considerable harm on local environments and public health. Iraqi authorities disclosed that the prevalence of cancer cases surged from 40 per 100,000 people prior to the first Gulf War in 1991 to an alarming 1,600 per 100,000 by 2005. A study published by the Smithsonian Magazine in 2019 emphasized that the wars and military interventions initiated